can share it with other people who are not able to join us or who maybe join a little bit late. So let's get started. Today we're going to talk about telling better stories to get hired. My name is Robert Henry, but before we get into the content, I want to thank both Alyssa and Julia from Airteam for putting this event together. I'm really excited to be here and talk about telling better stories and working with you so that you feel like you can tell better stories as well. Today is not just going to be me talking and presenting theory to you the whole time. It's really going to be more of a workshop that I want you to participate in. So hopefully we'll have some volunteers who can contribute. If you're not comfortable speaking, you definitely don't have to. But I do encourage you to write down some information, write down your own examples as we go through this so that you can walk away with something today. We're also going to be announcing a 5-week boot camp that we're going to be doing together, Alyssa, Julia, and myself. It's going to be about improving your English skills, getting more comfortable doing English speaking interviews, writing better resumes, building better LinkedIn pages, and there's going to be a little bonus for everyone that's here today at the end of today's presentation. So stick around until the end, even if you're not super excited, all right? So a little bit about me before we get started. I am originally from the US. I grew up in California, but I've also lived all over the place in New York, Virginia, and even outside of the US. I'm actually talking to all of you from Portugal today. I have a bachelor's degree from Penn State University. I studied business management, but I also studied economics and international business. And I've been teaching English and helping people advance their careers for the last 4 years now. I've worked with people from 38 different countries at this point, so that's been really cool. And I've helped people get jobs at places like Amazon, Microsoft, and even lots of smaller companies as well. So I've started 2 different platforms. The first was just about teaching English. That was called peertopeerenglish.com. I still work with some people there, but I've now started kind of a career coaching business as well. So that's my initials, rjhcareercoaching.com. And that's where I focus on all of the skills that we're going to talk about in our 5-week camp and some of the stuff we're going to discuss today. So that's enough about me. Let's talk about facts and stories. So really quickly, I just want to do an overview because a lot of time people think they're telling stories when really they're just saying facts, okay? A fact is just something that is true, tells us something that's happened. So I went to the beach today. That's a fact, not a story. Stories are a little bit different because they have structure, right? You're going to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, which makes it more interesting and more memorable than facts. So when we're in interviews, we want to tell stories, not facts. Of course, this is particularly important so that you can be memorable when you're in an interview, all right? Right now, it seems very simple, very easy to tell the difference between a fact and a story. But when you get into an interview, maybe you're a little bit nervous, maybe you're a little bit stressed. Many times, we simply tell facts and we don't take time to develop stories because we're a little bit nervous and we kind of just want to get to the next question. So today's workshop is going to be about creating better stories in advance so that when you get to the interview, you feel a little bit more comfortable and you have a step-by-step process to answer the questions and tell better stories. So what are the keys to fantastic storytelling? The first key is purpose, right? You want to think about why you're telling the story. We tell stories for all sorts of reasons. Sometimes we're just sharing something funny with a friend. Sometimes we're hoping to convince someone to buy something. Sometimes we're teaching somebody something. So when you're in an interview, what do you think the purpose of your story is? Can anyone think of why we would be telling a story? Feel free to jump in.
To be remembered.
Okay, perfect. To be remembered. That's great. Anything else?
To share. We tell stories to share. And like, this is how actually stories were created in Snapchat, because founder wanted to share the stories he had during the day.
Exactly. That's perfect. All right. So in an interview, we're normally doing two things. We're educating and we're persuading, right? We're teaching the interviewer about us, and we're kind of persuading them that we're a good fit for their company and for the position we want. So as you prepare for your interview, you always want to keep this in mind, educating and persuading. The second key to a fantastic story is emotion, right? We tell stories to build a connection with people we're talking to, okay? The reason we feel this connection is because they're actually chemicals in our brain. And they might sound like big fancy words, but dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins, all of these things help us feel certain emotions and help us connect with a storyteller. So when you're telling stories, you want to create these emotions so the interviewer remembers you and helps you stand out. The next big thing is empathy, right? Empathy is the ability to feel someone else's feelings or to imagine yourself in their scenario. People always connect more with you if you act like you're kind of an underdog. So you want to remember to be humble when you're telling your stories. You don't want to talk about how perfect you are. You want to discuss not only what you've achieved, but some challenging experiences, right? And what you've learned from those experiences. So as an example, you might say something like, April of 2020 was particularly challenging for me due to COVID lockdowns. Despite not being able to host in-person events and having my 3 kids stuck at home because the schools were shut down, my marketing team and I were able to increase the number of leads by triple that month. Through this experience, I learned a lot about online event creation and email marketing that I can bring to your team in the future, okay? Here, you're creating empathy by providing some detail, telling them how your kids were at home, that was making your life difficult. This makes it easier for the listener to connect with you, to feel like, okay, yeah, I get this guy. I understand that situation. So when you're telling stories, you want to create that empathy. Another huge detail is enthusiasm, right? This is really hard for ESL speakers sometimes because we're more focused on our grammar and trying to speak perfectly. But if I say to you, my name's Robert and I'm a career coach, or my name's Robert and I'm a career coach, you're immediately more attracted to the second version, okay? And I'm not saying you have to speak like that throughout the entire interview, but you do want to bring some enthusiasm to the interview and not worry so much about speaking every word perfectly, especially if you're going to be talking to companies in the United States. We're all about enthusiasm, right? We want to see your energy and excitement for the position. The next key to a fantastic story is detail, all right? Detail can include anything from colors, times, sights, sounds, smells. All of these details can make your story more lifelike and, again, more memorable. But when it comes to storytelling for interviews, context is important, but you don't want to add too much detail to drown out the meaning of your story. So the details I would always recommend including are timing. When was this? When did it happen? What was the position you held? And what was the company you're working for? You always want to identify the specific company. Don't make them search for it on your resume. Don't say my first job or my second to last job. Say when I was working at Amazon in 2021, X happened, okay? So by adding those feelings and details, you're gonna really stand out, and that's gonna help you throughout your interview. So a good example of like appropriate level of detail would be something like, last year when my company, Big Time Media, was asked to create a new ad campaign for a new customer in just 1 week, I really didn't know if it was possible. But by motivating my team through new bonus incentives, we launched a whole new ad campaign in just 7 days. This project generated 25% more revenue than any other project that year, and I had never felt so thrilled or proud to pull off a major campaign. Okay, if you add just a couple of these details and these feelings, it's going to be much more memorable than just saying, I did an ad campaign in 1 week last year. Okay, so adding these feelings and details is super important. So when we talk about creating our stories, this is where I really want to get you guys involved, okay? If you don't know where to start, it's always good to ask yourself a few simple questions. The first thing is, who's your audience, right? What are you hoping to share with them? In today's context, we're obviously talking about interviews, and we're talking about people like a recruiter, maybe an HR manager, maybe a potential colleague, maybe even a future boss. But you have to be honest and you have to realize they've probably met with at least a dozen other candidates with very similar CVs to you. So I want you to think about them for a minute. Do you think they're as excited or as nervous as you are about the interview? Or maybe could they be really busy with lots of work and this is the fourth interview they've had to do that day, right? You need to think about how you're going to stand out and how you're going to be memorable. So I want each of you right now to think about one thing that you want interviewers to remember about you when they finish the meeting with you, okay? Think about that, write something down if you want. This is going to be the start of your first story. What's one thing that really makes you stand out from other people? Your example could be something like, I created a new piece of code for my company that allowed us to double our user base. Or it could be, I designed a marketing campaign last year that was used all over the globe. Does anyone have an example about one thing that is really important that would help them stand out with an interviewer?
Yeah, actually, I'm on the opposite side. I'm just really interested in storytelling in general, but I'm never having time to get my hands on this masterclass on storytelling, and I just jumped into the opportunity to learn more. But for me, it's really simple. I've got a beautiful story of tone to begin with any like interview or partnership meeting we're having. So like there is only a question of what side of the story I'm telling in this exact case.
Okay. And when you're interviewing people, do you typically remember every single thing they tell you, or do you kind of pick out one key thing about each person to help you make a decision about how they might be beneficial for you in the future?
Well, I actually look at the complex stuff and rather trying people, like trying to create a context and getting the feedback from them of or like what level of complexity they can handle, what level of abstraction they can think in, and like to understand what where are we on the scale of strategy tactics, and how are they like built. Do they need to understand the high purpose? Can they understand the high purpose, and or can they like deliver knowing some details, like what level of details is essential for them? I'm trying to get the whole idea what the person I'm like communicating with. For example, like I had this interview yesterday. It's hard, like I've been traveling so much that I'm like having trouble to remember when the interview was like. But yeah, I think I was in a car to the airport in Bangkok. Yeah, and we interviewed a person for Lisbon hub, and she was really smart, so we jumped to the strategy and to general large scale bird view of the process for the next half a year or year, if we succeed to hire such person, and to set up the expectations, because it's still going to be an experiment for us, because it's hard. Nobody in the world has done that yet so far. I mean, like setting, not any person in the world has the experience of setting up crypto hubs, successful ones with some traction, because everyone is pretty much on the same page right now. So everyone experimenting. So I just rolled out this vision of experiments being run and hypotheses being tested one after another, and explaining that there are no right or wrong answers yet. There's just the common sense and the rational thinking behind planning and executing and moving forward step by step.
Okay.
So
We're
like
talking more about hypothetical situations rather than their past experience.
Yeah. I just realized that like, because given the reputation of the person who referred the candidate, I don't need like any formal background experience check. I just want to talk with person and to understand if there is a fit for the position.
Okay, awesome. Okay, that makes sense. And anyone else have examples? Anyone else think about one thing they really want to be remembered for when they go into an interview?
I can say that normally at the interview, I'm trying to impress people by being like natural, at least me,
Okay.
and being optimistic, like sunbeam. But it somehow conflicts now as I trying to be a project manager, and they are supposed to be people with technical background, and this is like a dualism, because I don't want to sound unprofessional like that funny girl with stories, but I want to sound like an expert.
Okay. So what makes you an expert? How can you prove to them that you are an expert, that you have some of these technical skills that they're looking
Um, only only facts, actually. This is what can make what can convince them. Like
for? Okay.
yeah, technical things.
Okay. And so what's a fact? Give me an example of a fact about you that you want them to understand and remember when you leave the interview.
um well, that I not only am a nice girl, but that I have an expertise.
Okay, but that's exactly what I mean. Expertise in what? Do you have an
uh
example of your technical skills?
Well, yes, I've launched a few projects for digital workplace implementation back in, in previous jobs.
Okay, excellent. That's perfect. That's a perfect example. That's much better than just saying I have expertise. It's telling me what you actually did and when you did it. That's a perfect example. So that's the start of a good story, right? And that can even be a theme throughout your interview, something that you really want them to know about you, that you have this experience, that you've done it before, and that you can do it again for them in the future. That's perfect. That's a great start.
Thanks.
Does anyone else have an example?
I think I have an example. I haven't been doing interviewing for a while, but when I used to work in luxury, like fashion marketing, and at my last interview, I said that I'm very detail oriented, and they asked me like, can you please specify like how it works and give us some examples? So I actually told them that I went to the store and there was like a luxury cosmetic brand. And I know your color of the year. I know 3 last products that you launched. I know which model you're using. I was telling them everything, like your color of the year is this, like the model that is at your last campaign is this. Your best sellers are these. And they were so impressed that they started to tell, like they started basically, this brand gave my CV to another brand, and they haven't found a position for me at their brand. My experience was not relevant because it was in retail marketing and I'm more in digital marketing. But they actually started to talk about me. Okay, this girl actually went to the store. She knows everything about our brand. She knows every single detail, like she knows every single product. This is quite impressive. And they actually started to share my CV with every single like brand manager. And I got hired like in 1 month by another brand, just because this was like quite impressive for the brand manager of the brand.
Yeah, that's excellent. That's more about like doing your research in advance and putting in some extra time. But it's also a great example of like how preparing for an interview can lead to better results, right? Because you took the time to go to the store, to understand what the company was all about. And even though they couldn't find you a position, they were so impressed, they passed you along to somebody else. That's amazing. Alexi or Marina, any examples from you guys? I know you could be busy with children, so that's perfectly fine. I'm going to move on a little bit and talk about adding some details. Now that you've got a start, or at least are thinking about a start and what you want someone to really remember, now we need to start to add some details to that story. So when it comes to adding relevant and interesting details to your stories, like I said before, you don't talk about just what you accomplished, but what you've learned. So Inessa, for you, it's not just that you've implemented these programs in the past, but talk about like how you went through that experience and what you learned with each thing. How did you change because of that experience? So these details will help add interest to your story and again, kind of keep you connected to the interview as you go throughout the process. So the more details you can add to a clear and concise answer, the more likely you're going to be the candidate that gets chosen. So instead of thinking about just one big thing, I want you all to think specifically in the last year, just about one thing that you learned in your job. What's one thing that you learned and what did it help you accomplish? Could be like how to better manage a team. Maybe you learned a new coding language if you're a technical person. Maybe it was about creating more engaging social media content. What's one thing that you've learned that you could share in a story to convince someone to hire you?
I learned how to make the whole world my ally by being less of myself and relying on the facts and validated opinions of the customers in order to move forward any initiative I want to move, because I only want to move only those initiatives which are going to be helpful, and means that like it only makes sense to gather all the facts and the feedback and like rationale for moving forward, and then to present it to anyone. And thus I'm not making any effort on my part to sell anything to anyone. I'm just showing people that it's the only sane and optimal option to resolve to. And I feel frustrated because so basically, in order to have less conversations and to have less discussions, you need to work more. But it also means that there are like no considerations and no like arguing and debating. You're basically showing that you made a reasonable effort to arrive at such conclusions, and any other person who will do the same job will arrive at the same conclusions with the same facts. So it changed me a lot, because now I'm not trying to do more, but I'm trying to do less.
Interesting. Okay. And what do you think that's helped you accomplish in the last year?
Oh, it helped me to set some ecosystem initiatives in motion to get better in strategy, get better in communicating with people, because I don't communicate anymore, I guess. I'm just laying over the facts and gathering all the feedbacks, doing homework, and then presenting the stuff I've collected.
Okay, interesting. Very good. Anyone else have an example of something that they've learned?
I can share.
Okay, excellent.
Well, for me, this year was very transformational, because I've worked as a corporate communications manager for 6 years. And being a communications manager internal, to be accurate, you should be cross functional, and you should do an event management, and copywriting, communications, of course. And a small part of this is actually improving digital workplace for employees. And actually, I really like this part the most. And I decided that I will have a sabbatical, and I quit working as a corporate communications manager, started learning actually project management at software development to just do this. So yeah, this is a big change for me, but I think yeah, I have enough resources to start, and
Excellent.
and yeah.
Yeah, so your focus here on what you've learned could be these courses that you've taken, right? And how they've impacted you and how they've made you a better candidate for the future. So do you have like specific courses that you've taken for product
Yeah.
management? Yeah.
Well, I attended like a 6-month course at Yandex to add specification to the knowledge that I had being just a project manager for internal projects. So it was just for employees, and now I'm going to do the same for the market, just for users, for commercial projects.
Okay, excellent. So if you don't have an accomplishment related to that yet, you can talk about what it will help you accomplish in the future, right? Like working with corporate clients. That's amazing. That's exactly,
Yeah.
that's a perfect detail, right? That's something that you've learned, and that can be a great story to tell during your interview process, especially for someone like you. If you're not working now, you want to explain what you've been doing in your spare time, right? So creating a good story around those courses, what you've learned, and what you believe it will help you accomplish is really important. That's perfect. All right. Anybody else? Alexi, Marina, Yulia? All right. So you need to think about, obviously, some other details that you want to share, and you can add details to lots of stories. But the stories you tell should always be relevant, okay? And how do you know that they're relevant is based on the job description, right? Many of the job descriptions are going to tell you exactly the skills they're looking for. So you want to make sure that the stories you tell are relevant, meaning they're related to the skills that they want you to have, okay? And throughout your interview process, you're always going to want to highlight these big accomplishments that we've discussed a little bit before, but also some failures, okay? Here's a strong example. Since we didn't have a lot of audience participation, you could say something like this, okay? In the last 3 years, I've developed very strong communication skills working with international teams across 4 different time zones. I've had to learn how to lead various groups of technical engineers while only being able to communicate during certain periods of the day. This has helped me be a more concise and effective communicator when talking about targets and deadlines, and has helped me be more confident as a leader. Since 2019, my teams have achieved 92% of their goals on time. And I believe these skills will help me be both a strong communicator and leader for the new international tech team here at Binance or Toyota, wherever you're applying, okay? So it's that sort of structure, those sort of examples and details that will lead to very successful results for you. So now I want to move forward to the tell me about yourself question, right? This is like the most dreaded question, but also one of the most common questions. It's how almost every interview starts, and it might not sound exactly like this, but some sort of version of this question will most likely begin your interview. Nailing this interview question is really important because it builds some momentum for you, right? If you have a strong answer here, you build a little confidence and you feel really positive moving forward. So where do we start with this kind of question? Do you guys have any idea? Like, what do you think people want to know? What's appropriate for this kind of interview question? When someone says this to you, how do you begin?
I will begin with a story of Marc Chagall getting introduced to the rap storytelling.
Sorry, say that again.
Is it a relevant story to share?
I didn't hear what you said. You said you
Uh,
met someone.
I would begin with a story of how reportedly the rap storyteller got introduced to Marc Chagall. Like the one big artist got introduced to another big artist.
Okay. And why
Is
would
it the right
this be
time?
relevant?
Because like it is said that once they met, and rap storyteller is a big Soviet sculptor, and Marc Chagall is Marc Chagall. Of course, you should know him. Like he's a famous, well-known, world-acclaimed like artist. And rap storyteller was like saying like I'm the honorary member of this, that, and so like I'm really that laureate of that blah blah, and like I built this, that, and so on and so forth. And Marc Chagall just listened to this introduction, and then he said, "Hi, I'm Marc Chagall."
And how would this be relevant for talking about yourself?
So there are two ways. First of all, just to work on your brand name and just introducing like yourself. And the second well is to report the job you've done and can sell you. And the least acceptable way I think is to brag with the awards you get, because awards are just awards.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Does anyone else have any other ideas about what they might include for their personal answer to this question?
I think interviewers will pay attention only to the things that are relevant to them. So it's not really important to say how good you are at things that you think you are, but just the things that they can interpret as relevant for them. So you should, someone should probably know really well what they are looking for and to present themselves in the way they were just waiting for you to say.
Exactly.
You are the one.
Exactly, right? We just talked about that. The answer is usually in the job description. There's usually a list of
Yeah.
the skills that they want you to have. Sometimes they even say, like, our ideal candidate will look like this. So your job here when you start answering this first question is to make yourself look like that, right? So you need to match your skills and your stories to what you know they already want. It's really a lot easier than we make it out to be. We don't need to talk about like personal information about even where you're from or what you like to do on the weekends. You want to stick to those relevant details that you know they're already interested in. So, as an example of a fact, someone might say something like, my name's Sarah and I'm a software engineer at Amazon. I help make our app better and I know JavaScript very well. Okay, that's more like a fact about me. But that same person could build a story by saying something like, my name is Sarah, and I'm one of 8 technical team leads on a front-end software engineering team here at Amazon. My team and I currently work on our customer-facing app to improve conversion rates. This year, our conversion rate improved from 35 to 72%, thanks to changes we implemented. In the past, I worked for Facebook as a front-end engineer, but I was also responsible for hosting JavaScript workshops for new hires. This experience helped me develop strong communication skills, which I now use effectively to lead my team of 10 people. I believe my leadership experience, strong communication skills, and technical ability will help me be a strong team lead here at XYZ company and help me improve app download rates, which I know is what you're looking for. Right? So it's like taking the specific things from the job description and providing those examples. We don't just say like, I have this skill, show how you've used that skill and you're much better off, okay? So when you start to think about the structure for this answer, I think the best way to do it is to simplify it into 3 parts. Start with the present then you talk a little bit about the past, and then you move towards the future, all right? So for the present, we talk about our current role and whatever success metrics we use or our boss uses to judge us on doing a good job or not. So anyone have a current role right now and success metrics that they use to know whether they're doing a good job or not? All right. So if nobody's working right now, that's fine. But let's imagine that you're.
Robert, I would love to collaborate, but like I'm on partner level, so there are like no exact KPIs.
Of course.
So
Of course. No.
Let's invent something.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think there are KPIs for yourself as well. I don't know. We're like doing this community together with Yulia. I think there are a lot of KPIs that we can put to ourselves, like for ourselves, like if we're good team players, if we have good feedback from our team, if we are good communicators, if we are good in delegating things, you know, like over controlling is, I think there are a lot of KPIs that you can put for yourself.
Well, and how do you guys do it for Airteam? What is success? Is it building a bigger community? Is it helping a lot of people get hired? What is like the key thing that you guys are working towards? How do you measure whether you're doing a good job or not?
Yeah, we measure feedback, like how many people like actually giving us feedback. Okay, that was very useful. That was very important for me. And we receive a lot of feedback from after our webinars. We measure like community growth as we have new people joining and not a lot of people leaving actually, so people are staying in the channel, so it means it's interesting for them and the content is relevant. This is so basically our churn rate is not high. We measure it, we're launching some educational products that we will talk about at the end of this workshop, hopefully. And I think, we're gonna measure how many people will get a job actually after our courses and after our workshops. Is it actually relevant and useful for them?
That's a perfect example. So for you, Alyssa, you could say, my name's Alyssa and I am I don't know what you call yourself, community manager at Airteam. And we measure ourselves in terms of growing a large community and getting people hired. In the last year, we have grown a community from 0 to 285, and we've helped over 50 people get jobs and advance their careers. Perfect. Something as simple as that could be how you start your answer. That's how you talk about the present, right? Then for the past, you can pick out an achievement that you've had that shows a skill that you know the job is looking for, just like the examples we talked about before. Or you can go back to that one big thing, the most impressive thing that you've ever accomplished. In the past, I worked for beauty companies and helped market over a dozen different products in 13 different countries, resulting in an increase of revenue of 200% for my company, Beauty Supply. You know, something simple like that. So you go from present to past, and then you talk just a little bit about the future. Right? Here's how you talk about how you'll use that skill. Since I know how to build in a community, and I've done so at Airteam, I know that I can build a great community for Nike's new online marketing program, right? It's using the skills you already have and showing them that you can do that again in the future. So if you keep that in mind and you write down some ideas, starting with the present, moving to the past, and lastly, 1 or 2 sentences about the future, you've got a really good structure for this kind of answer. Obviously, there's no like perfect answer, but by simplifying it and having this structure, you can be confident in this answer because you know this type of question is coming, right? If you don't have enough information there, you can also add something relevant about why you started doing what you're doing. Okay, if you don't have a ton of current experience like Inessa, you're between jobs, you can talk about how you decided to make this change. What motivated you to do that? Where does the passion come from? This can also be a really relevant detail. And when you get into
Actually,
length here,
sorry.
yeah.
I actually have what to say about in between jobs.
Okay, perfect.
If I can.
Please.
Well, I volunteer at local volunteer organization, and I can say that I coordinate actually volunteers. So that would be a transferable skill as a
Absolutely.
project manager.
It's up to you to kind of make it a transferable skill, right? So you need to match that experience to with something they're looking for. Maybe they're looking for a strong manager and leader. You can talk about volunteering and coordinating volunteers and the challenges you faced while doing that will help me be confident I can do that again for you in the future. That's perfect. You've obviously also got these courses you're taking, so I think you're in a good position. You've got lots of relevant experience that you can talk about to be successful in your next interview. Okay? But telling stories isn't just tell me about yourself. We also can answer lots of questions with stories, right? Any behavioral interview question.
Sorry, Robert.
Yeah.
Sorry, Robert. I think we have some comments in the chat because Alexei, for example, he cannot speak right now, and we understand why. And he left us some very valuable comments and answers to your questions. So if you can read them.
Yes, sorry, I didn't see that.
Sure.
Excellent. I think that's a great contribution, Alexi. I appreciate it. And I'm amazed that you can type and wash a baby at the same time. Your KPIs here are perfect, right? How each experience contribute to current business metrics and your overall success rate. That's awesome. That's exactly where you are right now. And that's how you can start your introduction to this tell me about yourself question. If you talk about these kind of metrics, anything measurable always sticks out a little bit more. So the fact that you've had a success rate of 80% or over 80% is excellent. And that's certainly something that you want to include in your example. That's perfect. Sorry, I didn't catch that before. Thanks, Alyssa, for pointing that out. All right, so I don't want to take too much more of your time. We have about like 10 minutes, but I did want to just point out a few key things that, you know, this isn't just about answering, tell me about yourself. I want you guys really thinking about structuring stories for lots of different interview questions and how you can make yourself memorable in answering different types of questions. So they're not all going to be about your skills and achievements. There's also going to be some about failure, right? A really common story is like, hero or heroine overcoming an obstacle to reach success. You can frame your stories in the same way, right? You can talk about difficult situations, but then focus on more what you learned and how you'll prevent future failures from happening than just talking about the failure or the difficult situation itself. Lots of times you'll get questions like, tell me about a conflict you've had with a client or a colleague. Tell me about a time you missed a deadline, okay? It's important here that you're honest and that you admit that you've made some mistakes, but don't just stop there. Tell me what you learned from the mistake and how you're gonna prevent this from happening again in the future. We all have lots of failures. It's taking the time to think about them and crafting a good story about it that will help you answer these questions successfully and not let this question, you know, kind of bog you down and prevent you from getting hired. The last key detail about stories that I really want to drive home, because I've noticed in my clients, this is a big problem. We always want to talk about results, right? So Inessa, you just mentioned working with volunteers. I want you to think about like, what has that resulted in? What have you actually done? What have you gotten these volunteers to do? And what have you guys accomplished together? Maybe you're feeding underprivileged children or clothing the homeless. Try to think about a result of your action. Don't just tell me the story about volunteering, okay, or organizing volunteers. Does anyone have an example of a failure or maybe just a learning experience, if they don't want to talk about a failure exactly, that they've had in their previous job or maybe even their current job? Something that was really kind of difficult or unfortunate, had an argument with a colleague, had a boss that kept asking you to do impossible tasks. Anything like that that comes to mind for anybody?
The day before yesterday, I realized I forgot to apply for Indian visa. So I had to head to Bangkok to spend the night over there and to organize application for like expedited review of my visa in order to get from Bangkok to India. And I did that because I'm obviously overworking and overloaded, and it's not like and like all the safeguards which I had failed because partner which could have helped me with trip organization fell sick, and like PAs weren't able, like they I had the conversation on 25th of November with with PAs that like if I need I asked if I needed visa, how to apply for Indian, but nobody took action on moving this forward. And I didn't set myself a reminder. No, I applied for visa myself. So, lessons learned is that I probably need to be setting up those business trips a bit more thoroughly, because yeah, it was like the planning issue, the planning fallacy.
Okay, excellent. That's perfect. That's a real life situation from the last 24 hours that didn't go as planned, but you've learned something from it, and hopefully you can use that experience in the future to make sure that all your visas are sorted before you get to the airport. That's a perfect example. Something as simple as that could be a failure that you've turned into a learning experience. I love it. Anyone else can think of a failure?
Yeah, I can share my case. It won't be about volunteering. It will be more about development process. Actually, once when I worked in a company, and the development team consisted only of 2 developers and a designer, we had actually a failure when we migrated a platform, digital platform, and the sensitive information leaked because of the actually failure of the developer. And fortunately, employees haven't noticed it, but it's just by accident actually. But after that, we learned, and I, as a manager, learned that we should have implemented, and then we actually implemented more steps of testing and risk management actually to prevent such stories in future.
Okay, perfect. So I think that's a really good example. I think the only thing I would change slightly is you don't want to place blame on anyone in particular. So we don't want to say like, it was because this one developer screwed everything up. It's better to just say like, my team and I had this issue and we learned from it and we implemented some new strategies to prevent that happening again in the future. It was actually a great learning experience for me because I know that I need to be extra careful when handling sensitive data. And although I was lucky in the past, I know I might not be so fortunate in the future. So now I really make sure that myself and my team are extra careful whenever handling this type of data.
Yeah.
Something like that. But that's perfect. That's a great example. It's an unfortunate thing that happened, but these things happen. We need to deal with them, learn from them, and prevent them from happening again in the future. That's excellent. It looks like Alexi has a comment.
Funny question, actually.
Yeah, that's actually a good question. I wouldn't personally recommend that. I think without the proper context, you know, on a CV.
Robert, can we read it? Because if people will see it in recording, they might not see the chat. So
Sure. So Alexi asked, he said, I got a feeling that all CVs are usually too perfect. Is it okay to put an epic fail as a teaser somewhere on a CV? Or without proper explanation, it's the same as shooting yourself in the legs. So Alexi, I would go with the latter. I wouldn't do that. I think you're kind of hurting yourself there. I think it's something you can definitely discuss in an interview scenario where you have a bit more time to explain the context about all the details that happened and maybe how you fixed that or learned from that experience. But on a CV, you really don't have the space to explain all of that. And if you're listing a bunch of failures on your CV, I think you're gonna throw some people off. I get where you're coming from, maybe that you're trying to be funny or maybe catch somebody's attention, but I can't say that I've seen that executed successfully before. So I would avoid big failures on the CV. I would focus on the positive things. Okay.
Got it. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. So hopefully you've got a little bit of a start, some ideas for potential stories you can tell, things that you might talk about. As you develop your stories, I can't drive home enough the point that practice is really, really important. So I would start by writing down your stories. I would then, you know, practice them, add some details, try to get them as good as you can on your own. This could be sitting in front of a mirror, could be recording yourself with your phone or your computer. And then it's asking some friends, right? It's friends, family, maybe you work with a career coach or you ask somebody in the community to take a minute to practice with you. This will help you feel much more comfortable in the future. And each time you get some feedback, it can be hard to avoid that kind of disappointment, like, oh, I didn't do it perfectly, even though I've worked on this so much myself. But rather than be disappointed, look at it as an opportunity. Each time you practice, you're going to get closer to perfection. So it's really important that you take the time to do it in advance so that when you get into the interview, you feel that much more prepared, comfortable, and calm. And this is something we're going to work on a lot in our 5-week bootcamp. We're going to talk about all sorts of things, actually. We're going to talk about CVs and resumes, like Alexi was just talking about. We're going to talk about building better LinkedIn pages. We're going to talk about cultural differences between interviewing in the US versus some other places. We're going to have some templates for things like cover letters, thanking an interview, even negotiating a salary. We're obviously going to talk a little bit more about developing your stories, and we're going to be breaking into small groups. So it won't be like a big team setting all the time. We're going to have like these speaking clubs where we can actually practice a little bit of the theory that we've been talking about. And our end goal is that everybody feels more comfortable, right? Both with their English skills and with interviewing in particular. So I think it will be a great opportunity. I think there will be lots of interesting people involved, and I'm really excited about it because I think our main mission is really to help people, right? I know there's a lot of people in transition. They've either moved locations or they're thinking about starting new careers. And this 5-week bootcamp is kind of designed exactly for those people. So we're going to be mainly working with ESL speakers. So we're, you know, getting you more comfortable with your English in interviews is one of our main goals. So anybody, any English level is welcome to join. And we're going to do our best to make sure that everybody feels comfortable, everybody feels welcome, and everybody gets the attention they need to really be successful and hopefully find a good job in the future. So as we promised, the last thing we wanted to share is just a little code with you guys. If you decide to join our 5-week bootcamp, I think right now the best way to do that is to reach out to Yulia or Alyssa. And if you use this code Storyteller, you can get 30% off any of our packages. There's going to be a couple different options. We're still crafting exactly what that's going to look like. But this code will get you 30% off any package available. And we're really looking forward to seeing you guys there. Are there any questions about the bootcamp or about anything we've discussed today? Looks like we have one more comment. Oh, we've got a link for everybody if they're interested in checking it out in the chat. But any other questions from today? Anything about the content? Anything about the 5-week bootcamp? All right, well, if you think of anything, or if anyone wants like any of the examples that we've gone through today, or any others to kind of help you build out your stories and think about the structure of how you're going to answer questions in the future, you can reach me by email here. You can reach out to Alyssa and Yulia as well, and we would be happy to share that information and hopefully help you guys move forward and get a better job in the future.
Yeah,
Thank you very
thank you
much
so
for this
much.
presentation. Yeah, I really liked
Very
it.
useful.
Thank you, Robert, and thank you everyone for participating. And as Robert said, if you have any questions and if you want to participate in a career bootcamp that we're going to have in mid-January, reach out to us on Telegram, and we will share all the packages that we're going to have and all the information. It's coming. The landing page was on me. I'm late. I'm very sorry. Yeah, but next time I think we will have it. We will post it in our Telegram group in the next few weeks. So we'll keep you posted.
What's the name of the Telegram group?
Airteam. I just sent the link in the chat.
Oh, okay.
So you can go there.
Oh, yeah, I can see things.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks everyone and have a great day.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Great. Thank you
you.
guys. Appreciate your time. Hope you have a good day.
Bye.